What if the problem with rail travel between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore was never about trains being too slow, but about the entire journey being built on the wrong foundation? For decades, Malaysians and Singaporeans have often wondered whether better rail connectivity could finally rival driving or flying between the two cities. With the launch of the electric train service from Kuala Lumpur to Johor Bahru, many hoped the answer had arrived. Yet it quickly became clear that it was not. In this video, we explain why the ETS cannot substitute the high-speed rail, by unpacking the structural limitations of the ETS and showing why the HSR was designed to solve a fundamentally different problem. After 7 years of construction, the Southern ETS extension was unveiled in December 2025, promising modern trains and a fully electrified route. Yet almost immediately, reality set in. The journey time between Kuala Lumpur and Johor Bahru came in at nearly 4.5 hours, and that was before even crossing into Singapore. Instead of closing the gap with air travel or offering a genuine alternative for time-sensitive travelers, the ETS exposed the deeper structural limits of Malaysia's legacy rail network. This is where the long-abandoned Kuala Lumpur-Singapore high-speed rail begins to look less like a luxury project and more like a fundamentally different solution. In theory, the ETS could do much better. The rail distance from KL Central to JB Central is roughly 330 kilometers, with an alignment designed for speeds of up to 160 kilometers per hour. A 3-hour non-stop journey is technically possible. But the truth is, the ETS trains run at about 140 kilometers per hour to maintain safety margins and manage maintenance costs. Even more importantly, the train does not run non-stop. The new Southern ETS stops 15 times along the way, passing through towns such as Gimas, Segamat, Kluang, Kulai, and Kempas Baru before finally reaching Johor Bahru. These frequent stops pull the average speed down to approximately 75 kilometers per hour, resulting in a journey of at least 4 hours and 20 minutes under ideal conditions. The reason lies in the very DNA of the network. The southern alignment is not a modern intercity corridor designed for fast passenger movement. It is a legacy line inherited from the colonial era, built to move freight through the interior of the peninsula when ports and plantations mattered more than city-to-city commuting. The tracks snake through old towns and rural areas with curves, gradients, and land constraints that were never intended for sustained, high-speed travel. Yet, modern trains are now being asked to perform on infrastructure that was not designed for them. This is not a short-term limitation. Some point to ongoing rehabilitation works in the Klang Valley, particularly between parts of the Klang Valley and Seremban, as the reason for slower journey times. These works are expected to continue until at least 2029, effectively locking in today's travel durations for several more years. Beyond that, rail experts have already flagged future problems. The double-tracking works between Seremban and Gimas were completed much earlier than the Gimas to Johor Bahru stretch. Sections completed as far back as 2011 and 2013 will eventually require full renewal, not just routine maintenance. Because there is essentially only one north-south alignment, any major rehabilitation will inevitably disrupt services. Therefore, there is no guarantee that ETS speeds will improve in the future. Despite these constraints, some argue that the ETS, combined with the upcoming Johor Bahru-Singapore rapid transit system, makes the high-speed rail unnecessary. The logic appears simple. Take the ETS from Kuala Lumpur to Johor Bahru, walk over to the RTS station, cross into Singapore, and continue onward. In theory, this creates a continuous rail link between the two countries without the massive cost of building an entirely new, high-speed line. In reality, this argument collapses at the border. Johor, Singapore is already one of the busiest land crossings in the world, with massive daily flows of workers, shoppers, and travelers moving in both directions. Any journey that requires transferring at Johor Bahru is forced into this bottleneck. Customs and immigration clearance remain unavoidable friction points, especially during peak hours. Moreover, there is a 450-meter gap between the ETS platform at JB Central and the RTS station. While a travelator may ease the walk, it still adds time, uncertainty, and inconvenience, particularly for travelers with luggage, families, or elderly passengers. Once congestion is factored in, the entire journey becomes unpredictable. During morning peaks, crossing into Singapore via the RTS can take a significant amount of time, and when combined with the already lengthy ETS ride, a KL to Singapore journey can stretch towards 6 hours or more. Real-world experiences already reflect this. Travelers who attempted the new ETS soon after its launch documented journeys that took as long as 7 hours from Singapore to Kuala Lumpur once border crossing and transfers were included. For leisure travel, this may be tolerable on occasion. For business travelers or daily commuters, it is simply not competitive. This is the context in which the high-speed rail was originally conceived. The HSR was never meant to be a faster version of the ETS. It was designed as a completely separate system with a different purpose. In its original form, the HSR would connect Bandar Malaysia in Kuala Lumpur directly to Jurong East in Singapore in no more than 90 minutes. Crucially, this travel time was guaranteed by design. Immigration and customs clearance would be completed before boarding, eliminating border delays entirely. Once the train departed, the journey would be uninterrupted and predictable. The HSR was also designed to operate a domestic Malaysian service, stopping at key intermediate stations such as Sepang Putrajaya, Seremban, Ayakero, Muar, and Batu Pahat, running every 30 minutes with a journey time of about 2 hours. This service would fundamentally reshape domestic travel patterns. Malaysian cities that currently sit outside the daily commuting radius of KL has the potential to be pulled into a single economic zone. This broader impact highlights why comparing the ETS and HSR purely on speed is misleading. The ETS is an incremental upgrade. It improves comfort, reliability, and capacity on an existing alignment. It helps decongest roads and offers a practical alternative for certain journeys. The HSR, by contrast, is transformational. It competes not with buses or conventional trains, but with airplanes and private cars for high-value, time-sensitive travel. A 6-hour multi-stage journey involving multiple transfers will never attract travelers who currently fly between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore, or drive for business reasons. The difference also lies in network design. The legacy line of the ETS passed through mature towns with limited space for large-scale redevelopment. Stations are often constrained by existing urban fabric. The HSR stations, in contrast, were deliberately planned slightly away from old town centers. This was not a flaw, but a feature. It allowed land to be assembled for new commercial districts, logistics hubs, and high-value industries. The intention was to spread growth more evenly along the corridor rather than concentrating it in already saturated urban cores. Johor, which would host the longest stretch of the line and major maintenance depots, was positioned as a critical anchor rather than just a pass-through state. From an economic perspective, the ETS simply cannot support a true cross-border workforce. Daily commuting between Kuala Lumpur and Singapore demands reliability and speed that the ETS network struggled to deliver. The HSR, built exclusively for high-speed passenger trains, avoids this problem entirely. However, the history of the HSR has also been controversial. The idea first emerged in 2002, proposed by YTL Group as a 350-kilometer double-track line, cutting travel time to 90 minutes. Momentum built over the next decade, and by 2013, Malaysia and Singapore had agreed in principle to proceed. A formal bilateral agreement followed in 2016, targeting operations by 2026. The project was ambitious, expensive, and symbolically significant. It represented a deep integration of two national economies. That ambition also made it politically vulnerable. After Malaysia's 2018 general election, the new Mahathir administration suspended the project, citing fiscal concerns. Disagreements later emerged over governance structures, including a jointly appointed assets company meant to provide neutral oversight. With consensus unreachable, the agreement lapsed in 2021. Malaysia paid more than 320 million ringgit in compensation to Singapore for costs incurred during preparation and suspension. The termination reinforced public skepticism and raised questions about whether the project would ever return. Yet the HSR mega-project never fully disappeared. In 2023, Malaysia called for concept proposals from local and international firms to develop and operate the line through a public-private partnership. Multiple consortia were shortlisted, including groups led by Berjaya, YTL Construction, and Chinese state-owned enterprises. The government has since reiterated that the HSR would proceed only if it is privately funded, without direct public expenditure. As of October 2025, key parameters are still being finalized, and no final decision has been announced. What has changed since the HSR mega-project was cancelled is clarity. The launch of the Southern ETS, instead of killing the HSR dream, has sharpened the contrast between the two futures. One future relies on incremental improvements, layered onto old infrastructure, accepting bottlenecks, variability, and long travel times as unavoidable. The other imagines a seamless corridor where time, predictability, and passenger experience redefine how distance is perceived on the peninsula. Ultimately, the ETS and the HSR are not substitutes. They serve different markets and different visions of mobility. The slow reality of the ETS has made one thing clear. If the goal is genuine transformation rather than incremental improvement, the high-speed rail remains in a different league entirely. Yet, it is Malaysia that has continued to drive the push for the HSR mega-project, while Singapore has appeared more reserved since the earlier cancellation. Why does Malaysia seem more eager to revive the HSR than Singapore? And would Singapore even agree to return to the project? Watch this video to find out.